Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's online event, Quiz the WIz. For anyone new to this event, our small group of expert panelists will respond to some of your questions that were submitted prior to this event. Just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. We are recording today's session, and everyone who registered will get an email with a link on the demand version. The on-demand version. This session will run for a total of 30 minutes, which includes question and answers at the very end. For the presenters, I may pose one or two questions relevant to the questions during the presentation as they come up, but these will be limited and subject related only. For the most part, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A panel on the GoToWebinar console, and we will address them towards the end of the presentation. Lastly, if for some reason we don't have all the time to address questions for today, in the live event, please be assured that we will follow up with you directly afterwards. My name is Bill Bruton, and I'm account executive for SHEA Global. I have been with SHEA for about 6 months, but have over 10 years experience helping clients align solutions to some of their most pressing business challenges. I'm certain you'll enjoy the presentation from our panelists today. I'll be your host for Quiz the WIz. As part of my hosting duties, I'll now introduce you to our panelists. Before getting there, our team has much experience with helping customers in multiple industry verticals. We're an essential service according to the definition of the province of Ontario, as we are a global provider of ERP, CRM, BI, and demand-driven technologies and focused on transformation of supply chains. We will continue to stay open and service our clients. SHEA Global supports organizations in 25 countries and offices in Canada, US, UK, India, and the Philippines. Ready to meet our panelists. First on the list is Josh Fraser. Josh has been with SHEA Global's project delivery team since 2014. Josh is an experienced IT professional with over 10 years of progressive experience supporting large-scale projects in Microsoft environments, both on-premise and in the cloud. Next on our list is Grantley Smith. Grantley is a senior solution architect at SHEA Global. He has over 25 years of experience with a variety of technologies. Grantley's expertise is delivering high-value custom solutions for clients with complex requirements over a variety of industries. Next in a new joiner today, new panelist today, Jonathan Smythe. He's our Director of Mayhem. He has a background in production and commercial management and 23 years of providing IT solutions to blue chip companies with a global footprint. And last but not least, also joining us today is Michelle Firth. Michelle has a broad range of experience in technology. She has built trusted relationships with a long list of SHEA customers, having profiles in both manufacturing and wholesale distribution. She is one of our resident experts on SYSPRO. Welcome. Are you ready for Quiz the WIz?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Bring it on.
All right, so first question. Let's see, this is in regards to both a solid foundation, but also security. Everyone knows that that quote, the answer to life, the answer to life in the universe and everything is 42. But what are the most important settings to get right when deploying SharePoint sites for an internal behind the wall wiki? And does anyone want to take that? I would imagine this one is going to go to Josh.
Sure. Yeah. So obviously, as with everything in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, just make sure you bring your towel. On a more serious topic with the SharePoint permissions, really the couple things with deploying SharePoint internally is, I guess, first, obviously you want to make sure you have your security settings right for your groups and who's going to have access to your site, to contribute to it, to read it, etc. And then more importantly with SharePoint, I find that excuse me, the challenge is more around governance and adoption. So making sure everybody that's going to use the wiki knows how to edit it, knows what processes to follow for filling out the details and actually populating it. With SharePoint Online, if you're using Office 365, the other things that I would look at doing would be things like, you know, data classification, so you can use tags, so you can use searching. On-prem, the configuration for that is a little bit different. You can also do searching and indexing on-prem as well.
Very good. Thanks, Josh. Next question. Why do returns in SMARTLISTS not appear as a negative, and can it be changed? Who would like to take that question?
I'm pretty sure that's mine, Bill.
Okay.
Thank you. If you just give me the screen, I'll pull up. This is a GP question specific to a tool that's in GP called SMARTLISTS, which is an ad hoc query tool for pulling lists of data, downloading them to Excel, manipulating them, etc. And as the question correctly states, if we look at the sales transactions SMARTLIST, and I just call up that list in here, you will see, just let it refresh. I'm just going to resort that so we can see. And I'm just going to move the document amount column to the front to make it a little bit easier to explain what we're looking at. So if you look at the document amounts in a sales transaction SMARTLIST, and actually the same is true of a purchasing transaction SMARTLIST, all the amounts are positive. Whether it's a return, a quote, an invoice, an order, all the amounts show as positive. Now, there is a good reason for that. And the reason for that is that the subledgers always store all transactions as positive. They only become positive or negative when they hit the general ledger for GL purposes. But in the subledger, all transactions are stored as positive amounts along with an indicator of the document type. The document type tells you whether or not it should in fact be positive or negative, but that's not the way the data is stored. Actually, if you have the sales or the purchasing cubes installed for GP, the cubes do translate the numbers and sign them correctly based on the document type. But natively in the table, which is where SMARTLISTS is pulling from, all subledger amounts are positive. Now, that being said, you could download this to Excel and you could do a lookup on the SOP type and put a calculation in a spreadsheet to adjust the document amount. But if you have SMARTLIST Builder available to you, if you're one of the many GP customers that I know have SMARTLIST Builder, there's actually a really easy fix for this. So if you go and modify the SMARTLIST, and it will open up SMARTLIST Builder, and we go to the document amount field, and this actually works for a number of different fields, but we're going to do it on this one for now. If I just scroll down to the document amount field and click on the expansion arrow, SMARTLIST Builder adds some extra functionality in that lets you come over to here and set field options. And one of the field options is negative values, because the people that wrote SMARTLIST Builder E1 know that this is annoying, just as it was annoying for about 20 years that credits came before debits because the list was sorted alphabetically. That they fixed, this they didn't. So if you go to the negative values, you can actually choose for your document amount to display as negative based on a field. The field we want is in the same table called sales transactions. The field we actually want is called SOP type, so the sales transaction type, and then it will pull up all the values for that field. Quotes, orders, invoices, back orders, and fulfillment orders are all positive transactions. Returns are negative transactions. Save. Save. And it's just going to adjust the SMARTLIST itself. It's going to go refresh my SMARTLIST again because I've made changes to it. And if I go back to my SOP document amount, pull it back up to the front so it's easy to look at, and just let that rerun. and resort it, you'll see that all the returns are now negative numbers.
Wow,
Easy.
fantastic. Nice job, Grantley.
If you don't have SmartList Builder, there are other ways of doing it because SmartList also has its own built-in tool called SmartList Designer. There are other ways of doing it in the builder, but that's the easiest way possible to do it if you happen to have that tool available to you.
Excellent.
And it works on all the smart lists and all the subledger reports.
Thank you very much. Nice demo.
Back to you.
Cheers. Off to the next question. Why do returns in SmartLists, so we just answered that question. How can I set up workspaces for projects and sales? Who would like to take this question?
I guess that probably would be one for me.
That would be one for you, eh, Jonathan? Okay, excellent.
Okay, so if I just share my screen for a second, hopefully you can all see that. So right now we are sat in Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations. Just to explain what we've got, when you first log into the system, you can see all of the workspaces that you have access to within the system. For anybody that isn't familiar with 365 F&O, just to give you an idea of what one of the workspaces look like, if I just select Bank Management as an example, this will open the Bank Management workspace, and then I can choose to display some of the information maybe in one of the graphs. Now, just to explain some of the components that we've got here, on the left-hand side, we've got tiles. On the right-hand side, we've got shortcuts. And then in this central content pane here, we've got what is essentially just a Power BI report that's being displayed. So to create a brand new workspace, it's really quite easy. We start from the home page. We perform a right click and then personalize. We get a flying dialog that allows us to click this add a page link. When I click that, just over here on the right hand side, we can choose the type of object or type of page that we would like to add to our F&O instance. So in this case, it's a workspace, but we have the options of Power Apps or websites as well. So we select workspace, and in this example, I'll call this a demo WS for demo workspace, and click OK. The screen refreshes and the brand new workspace is displayed down at the bottom right hand corner. So if I was just to scroll down, we should be able to see, oh no, there it is actually, up at the top. So top left hand side. Now if I was to click that, we can see that initially the workspace is completely blank. So we need to start adding content to the various different areas of this workspace. So we'll start off with something relatively simple. We will add some information about our customers. So I hit the menu. In my favorites, I've got all customers, which I can select. And then all of the customers that have been set up on the system will be displayed within the window here. Now there is a new feature, and this is something that you just have to be quite careful of because it can catch you out. There is a new feature where we can have our own personalized views. It's a new feature for the latest build of 365 F&O, but we do have to make sure that we are selecting a saved view. So in this example, we're seeing customers within group 10, but it's feasible that I could hit the drop down and I could select the standard view, which will return for me all of the customers that have been set up within the system. So it's many different customer groups. Now to add that onto a workspace, it's very simple. I select the Options tab. So we have a number of different tabs, which as I select them, you'll see that the various different menu options on the top change. So if I select Options, Add to Workspace, I then have to choose the workspace that I would like to add this component to. So if we just scroll through, we just find our demo workspace, which is there. Choose the presentation. So a tile, that's the objects that were on the left-hand side that I showed you a minute or two ago. Lists are essentially like the list that we can see on the screen now. So it's a grid of data. And then a link is a shortcut just on the right-hand side. So for now, we will select tile, we will select configure, and then here we can say that this is all customers. And then we've got a show count on the tile as well. So if we want to see the total number of records behind that tile, then we would select yes, and then that would be displayed on the tile itself. Returning to the main screen just to test our workspace, and we can see now that we've got a brand new tile there, which is all customers. I think you're looking for some information around sales orders or projects. So let's take sales orders as an example. So again, I've got all sales orders within my favorites, so I select that. All of the sales orders are going to be displayed, but in reality, it's probably the open sales orders that you're going to be working with. So what we can do first of all is to click the drop down here to create a filter. So this is where you would create a filter that is perhaps just for the open sales orders within this specific view. So that should come up in just 1 second for us. And there we go. And then within the filter, we could specify where the status is exactly open order. Now, I suspect I've probably got one that I've saved previously. So if I hit the drop down for the standard view, then we can see open orders. So it's a pre-saved view to save me having to filter. I can select that I would like to add it to my workspace, choose the same workspace again. This time I'll select list, and then clicking configure will return all of the fields that are available to me within that specific entity. So we can see all of the fields on the open sales order table here. So again, I can remove the ticks and add the ticks to the fields that are of interest to me. Click the OK button. And then again, if I just return back to the main homepage, into my demo workspace, then we can see that the system has created a data list and has just returned all of the various different values in terms of the sales orders that were there too. Clicking See More will take me directly into the All Sales Orders form. And again, you've got the ability to have stacked lists if you would like. So we could have a data list which is open sales orders, open purchase orders, production orders, and any other type of order that might be on the system. The final area that you might want to add information is just the standard shortcuts. So to do that, if I just return to all customers, and then in this example, once the customers come up on the screen, I'm going to select options, add to workspace, and then where we've got tile instead now, I'm going to select link, configure. Now you can group these links if you'd like. So you could have a grouping of menu options, which is maybe for static data, a grouping of menu options, which is for transactional data. So this is going to be our customers, and then it could be static. If I can type, click the OK button. And then again, I press the Finance and Operations hot button to take me back to the main screen, into my workspace. And then we can see the links. This will shoot across to the right just as soon as the data is returned in that middle list, but we can always get to it just by scrolling along. So customers is sat now just directly below static data, giving me the ability to access a variety of different areas on my own personalized workspace. I think the key thing to remember is that the tiles and the grids are pre-filtered or can be pre-filtered, so they're intelligent short lists. Whereas just over here, these links don't have any sort of filter behind them, so it just takes you directly into customers, vendors, items, whichever other areas of the system you'd like to access, but without applying a filter. Hopefully that's helped to answer the question for you.
Very good, very good. Nice demo. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Awesome. Back to the questions. How hard would it be to set up SYSPRO at home? Just do a quick time check here. We're at 11:50, and I think this one will probably go to Josh. There's a second part to this question is there an extra cost associated with it?
Sure. So there's a couple ways of doing this. First one would be to have a VPN connection back to your office, and then you log into a server or computer in the local office and run SYSPRO. The other option would be to run a terminal server in the office, and you'd connect to it through remote desktop web access. There is a slight cost in the, for each of those. There's some setup time. If you use remote desktop gateway, there's some licensing and a certificate that you require. And if you use VPN, you have to have a firewall that supports it, as well as the static IP to allow you to connect to it. Both of which are, fairly straightforward to set up. We've done them a number of times for customers that want to access their ERP remotely. The important thing to know is just using a VPN and connecting to your office and then running your SYSPRO on your desktop computer, like on your laptop, is not supported by SYSPRO, and it's not recommended because of you could end up with database inconsistency and transactional issues.
Very good, very good. Anything related to the cost associated with that? Anyone who may be interested in working from home can also contact SHEA, and we're happy to support you in helping get that set up as well. Michelle, I think the next question is for you, also SYSPRO related. The question is, how hard would it, back on the same question again. How do I set up to trigger emails to relevant employees when stock less than safety stock, I'm assuming, or minimum in SYSPRO?
Okay, so there's a couple of different ways you can do this, obviously depending on your setup or what modules you might have installed. The kind of basic or budget way that you could do it is you could set it up in SQL directly by creating some sort of trigger. I wouldn't generally recommend doing that, especially if you've already got a ton of them, because they can hit the system quite hard. Another option would be to use SYSPRO's VB scripting within the interface directly, depending on how your users modify safety stock or below the minimum quantity once it reaches a certain threshold. So depending on obviously whether you're doing it in the user interface directly or whether you're doing it through some sort of custom program. If you're doing it in the user interface directly, VB scripting is a possible option there as well. Requires a little bit of knowledge obviously of VB script encoding, but that's definitely something that can be done. If you have SYSPRO's workflow module, you could definitely use SYSPRO's workflow module to set up notifications, not just for being less than safety stock or the minimum quantity, but also for kind of any number of fields or tables that that you're interested in sending notifications about. The other option, which I might be wrong on this, but I believe is available in SYSPRO 7, definitely available in SYSPRO 8, is SYSPRO's rules engine. So you can actually build custom rules to send alerts or do certain things or enact certain actions through SYSPRO's kind of built-in rules engine. The other possible alternative, and I actually would have to fact check myself on this because I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, is you may be able to use SYSPRO's e-signatures module. I can't quite recall whether that's, that allows you to set rules based on specific fields in tables, but it is possible. I'd have to do a bit of investigating. So if there is somebody that is looking to do that and possibly use e-signatures, that's something that I can look into. But there's several different ways you can kind of go about doing it. It's really going to be dependent on the frequency in which this sort of information changes. If it's something that changes very frequently, generally you wouldn't want to necessarily create a SQL trigger in the database directly, especially if you've got a lot of them. But yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can go about doing it, but without really knowing more, it's hard to say which one's the best because it's really going to depend on the user or the company and what their environment currently looks like.
Very good. I guess what that is too, as you said, depending on how much inventory your company is carrying, you wouldn't necessarily want a separate email for every single item that goes below safety stock, versus maybe a list or something like that. So it probably requires a little bit of sort of research around what the requirement is there.
Yeah,
But
the other thing actually, I was just going to say, Bill, you did say something interesting there in alerting people, depending on how often it happens. Is one other thing to consider is if it is something you decide you want to kind of engage in and set up a trigger email, whether it's in SQL, VB scripting, workflow, or the rules engine, just be careful to try to avoid sending it to individual users because it becomes really difficult to manage. You know, set up an email address for safety or minimum below threshold that reaches a group of users that you can manage in Exchange, for example, rather than having to jump into the code and change it every time somebody changes position, leaves the company, joins the company, etc. So just kind of a best practice there.
Very good. Is there just as a caveat to that, might be worth exploring alerts or alert type features within SYSPRO instead of an email trigger? Would that be possible?
Yeah, so things like workflow, rules engine will kind of accommodate that. That's a little bit more of the kind of full scale approach of setting up things like alerts, and not just alerts, but if you want to get, I guess, a little bit more advanced, if the user has to take a specific action if they get that email, and you've got workflow in the rules engine, rather than just alert somebody, you can potentially make it a little bit more kind of full scale and actually have that action automatically happen without user intervention. So really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If it's really just kind of an FYI, yeah, maybe an email trigger or just an email alert is sufficient. But if you're really, the root of what you're trying to do is to initiate a transaction or another transaction, you know, there's different ways that you can have that transaction automatically happen without the need to have somebody manually intervene.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Josh, I don't know if you still have your question. Josh?
Oh, I think he's gone.
Okay. So that looks like it's about it. I don't think we have any questions coming in. Thank you, presenters. Yes.
We were actually missing one question. The very first question that we had stated that the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. For those of you that haven't read the trilogy of 4 books, the question, it turns out, is what is 6 times 8?
Thanks, Grantley.
Anytime.
Always the resident expert with the most responses. Thank you. So we'll now go ahead and take some questions, but we haven't actually received any. And it looks like we've covered all of the questions in the presentation. For future sessions, and this is just a note to anyone who's attending today, but any of our future sessions, we're actually going to be changing the format starting today. You can submit your questions in the future, but the format of our presentation will actually be recorded rather than a live session. We'll post a series of videos every week with answers to those questions, and you can subscribe to getting the Quiz the WIz through the YouTube channel. That gets you free access to our experts throughout. And then the last slide that we have is if you're interested in submitting any questions to future webinars, please use the contact information on the screen, which is displayed, and we will include your question in future events or the video that we're preparing. If you'd like SHEA, support from SHEA on any of the topics that we've covered today, please feel free to contact us with the following email addresses, phone numbers, and through our website. We thank everyone for joining us today and our panelists for doing such a wonderful job with your presentations and responding to your questions. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.